as opposed to
I'd
bringing
also like to
attention.
point out what PJ's doing in the background.
All right, let's go back and let's take a pass and watch PJ. There it goes. There it goes. He used the force to make the phrase change happen. I think that's what it was.
He does like a little wax on wax.
He does. Welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing. I'm Cassie Winter.
Alicia Marshall.
Tonight we're talking about internal versus external preps for turns. We've got a couple of videos for you. First video is Christopher Dumond and Estelle Bonner from Spectacular. Let's go ahead and just watch the first song, and then when you're done, let us know, and then I'll give you the link to the second video. All right, the other video we're going to be watching tonight is Ben Morris and Malia San Nicolas from Palm Springs, 2014. Oldie but a goodie, and just watch the first song.
So we are looking at Estelle right here, and we're looking at some internal prep for her. You can see that Chris kind of sets her up to hang out there for a second while he does what he's doing, and you can see like she knows that she's going to rotate out of it because of the direction he's going and the direction her hand is going. So she not only waits, but she preps herself. So you can see that extra rotation that happens with her upper body, especially. You can really see it with that free arm. And so her weighted right foot, it stays kind of in the same place as she opens and rotates. And then at the very end, when she is like really quite over rotated there, it turns in and she has that extra prep to unwind. Should say. So in our context that we're talking about tonight, internal versus external. Internal is going to be like an individual, and external is going to be in the context of the partnership.
Extrapolating on it, so the external prep is Chris affecting Estelle's right hand, whereas the internal prep is how she follows through with that in her own body and adjusts the timing ever so slightly to have more control over following that lead.
Right.
So internal versus external is like where the force of the prep is coming from. Is it coming from outside you? Is it coming from your partner? That's external. If it's coming from inside you of your own volition, that's internal.
And internal preps are really good for like adjusting what's happening on the other end of the connection.
Yes. I really love how she uses that internal prep to just slow it down a little bit.
So looking at Estelle again right here, we want to look at the internal prep that she's adding to the external prep. You can see Chris is prepping her. However, what he's doing is not so much movement. So she adds to it. You can see her draping her free arm across her body, and you can kind of see that her body goes from like facing the audience to like facing the pros in the back. And that's something that you'll see with Estelle, is that you can see pretty drastically she adds a lot of internal rotation for preps.
And I really appreciate how Chris leads this prep, because it's really common on this one to almost bring the hand back towards the follow instead of asking them to progress. So you can see that the hand, I guess the camera's panning, so it makes it a little hard to see, but if you watch the hand hold in relationship to Ben Morris's face, you can see that the hand hold progresses down the slot even though it's shaping to Estelle's right. And that's really important for creating that prep. Mm-hmm. And then Estelle is then, like Alicia said, using extra internal prep to have more power for the rotation.
Mm-hmm. I think I was going to say, as a follow, that internal prep is good to, like, if you can tell that something might not end up being on time, it's really helpful to increase, like, at a faster speed to get through whatever is happening faster. Mm-hmm. However, that needs to really be communicated through the connection. If you're just doing that yourself and not connecting to the partner, then it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next, because there are two ways to shape into this moment. There's one where you're continuing to actually increase connection with your partner, and then there's a way that disengages from the connection. And depending on the situation you're in, you might want to use one or the other. But this is, in particular, is a situation where increasing the connection is really helpful, because then Chris has the information he needs to understand what kind of follow through she needs to be comfortable through that turn. Yeah, I think this is the next bookmark you wanted to talk about.
Oh, yes. I wanted to talk about this really awkward handhold that they get into, which you might not notice if you weren't actually looking at it.
Ain't it pretty? Their wrists are saying hello.
So because there's such a like unstable connection between the two of them, Estelle really helps move through that moment by adding that internal prep, internal rotation. And she's increasing that compression. Because not having that handhold, you really need to have that good spring out of it.
Yeah, so one of the things she's doing is really connecting to Chris's wrist. Mm-hmm. So she's taking what is offered and connecting with that. What I appreciate is Chris isn't increasing the rotation for her. So she's actually still in an ergonomic position with her left arm this whole time.
Yeah, and you can see how little his hand moves in comparison to the amount of prep that she has.
Yeah, because part of it is how she just prepped her right foot forward. She's already prepped for rotation. So all he has to do is lead her forward out of that to create the prep based on the connection. He's just taking advantage of what Estelle had already set up, which required very minimal prepping. Mm-hmm. I also love her arm styling through that rotation. It's really lovely. We'll do it extra slow. So she brings her right arm through while she extends her left arm out, so they're like swapped. And then she draws across. Yeah. It's really simple arm styling, but it's always just so lovely. Mm-hmm. Was there more that you wanted to say about that one, or should we go on to the next one?
I think the only other thing was I just wanted to point out, you can like see like kind of like the zipper on her pants, I guess. I wanted to point that out because I will later as well. But you can really see how much it comes like towards the audience. Mm-hmm. Like she is very rotated. Because right here, it's just like flat to the side. This is, I think, where I was talking about whatever PJ is doing in the background.
He's like, ooh, I'm stealing that. That's what that is. I'm stealing that move. Brian's concerned.
So we're looking at Chris kind of for this one. We're looking at really both of them. But we're looking at, so this kind of prep that happens, it doesn't set things up quite the way that he was wanting. And so I wanted to mention that out of that prep, like, he does a really good job of immediately adjusting and not just going with what he was going to do. So you can see, like, he goes for that flat hand against the body. So he's wanting to, like, toss her out, like, along the arm. But as soon as he feels that, like, there's not enough for him to wrap around to do that, he brings it up, catches her, and then keeps moving and kind of uses her as a little extra momentum for himself to really get past her.
And I want to talk a little bit about the way he preps and follows through with this initial underarm turn. Because he preps it slightly to the left of the slot, his left, Estelle's right, which is helping her shape to her right as she steps forward onto her left foot. And see how the hand then goes down? So he's prepped it, he's letting it down. And this is where he's actually creating a swing arc with his left hand. So it's going down and it's starting to cross the slot as it swings upward. That motion of swinging down and then going up is something that accelerates the follow through from the prep.
Yeah.
So if you want to follow to pivot on one foot really quickly, that's one of the ways to do it, as opposed to just applying more force.
And I think one thing I do want to note is that the combination of internal and external prep here is what kind of gives a little bit too much energy.
Yeah, agreed.
As you can see, Estelle is really rotating into it, which is fine, but that is then making her unwind a lot faster. And so she's already past him.
Yeah, because he tries to extend his arm out. He should have had his arm extended here to be able to catch her, but he's just a little too slow.
So it's just one of those things that, like, a lot of times combining internal and external preps are going to be very helpful, but sometimes not so much. Sometimes it will end up, doing something that was not meant, and you just kind of have to go with it.
Yep.
And that's one thing that Estelle does all the time, is that she really has that free arm, like, as back as she can.
Yeah, because it helps create a good, like, stretch across the muscles that can then be released to create power.
I know that I've heard plenty of leads say that they really enjoyed that about dancing with her.
Yeah, because I know from my experience leading this particular turn from closed position, because all of the leading is coming from the lead's right hand on the follow's back. And for a leader, to lead a follow who does not add their own internal prep to this prep. When it's the leader's job to do 100% of that prepping for the follow, you need to have a really mobile wrist to be able to break at the wrist, to be able to then follow through. It's just very hard to do if the follow isn't helping on their end.
And that's something that you can also see is with her. So she goes from, you can see that left arm is not really like connected to him whatsoever. But as soon as she's opening the right arm, she's connecting with the left arm to get that extra compression that she's creating. And she does a great job of placing her arm along Chris's arm because she's getting the maximum amount of space.
Yeah, and she's focusing on really connecting with his wrist.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, for instance, if she had her elbow raised and she was just like, there was a gap between his wrist and her arm, and she was just putting her left hand on his shoulder or bicep, mm-hmm. he wouldn't have as much control. It's sandwiching his wrist that's offering that really strong connection.
Mm-hmm. Emma said, as a lead, how do you feel about / adjust to a follow who takes a prep and gives you more momentum than you expect? I tend to do this to my leads and try not to, but like to know what extra work it's going to make them do.
Oh, it's interesting. I prefer a follow who will turn more on their own than one who doesn't. It's actually funny. A lot of leader dominant West Coast swing dancers who start to follow do not power themselves through turns at all. And it's very exhausting to do all the work for them. So I would prefer to have a follow who adds their own internal preps and has a lot of power, because then once I kind of get used to what the equation is, like how much power my follow adds, I can dial back my external prep for them just right. So they're actually going at the rate that I want them to. But I realize that's a really advanced concept for a leader to be able to make those micro adjustments. But personally, I really enjoy it because then that's something I can work with. Whereas a follow who I have to provide all of the prep for them because they don't add internal prep, then I'm spending the entire time puppeting them. And I don't get to dance with them as much or dance myself. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers your question, Emma, because like I really love it when a follow has their own internal power source.
Emma said, yes, internal power is what I'm used to, probably because I learned to turn in solo dance. Yeah.
Gotcha. Bingo. Yes. That's one of the things that gets left out, I think, a lot if you just go straight to partner dancing and you don't have the solo background.
Mm-hmm. You need to learn to turn on your own.
Yes.
So I just wanted to look at the really smooth transition that he has between that external and internal prep. So he is doing external prep for Estelle, but at the same time, you can see he brings that left arm out and the right arm comes up higher, so he gets this angle. And that allows him to, as he kind of brings it in and rotates around, it gives him extra momentum because he is going to do some styling here. And you can see he has that continuous rotational energy. Also, his face is great.
I know. That's what that is so beautiful.
When you're like, I think this is gonna work.
I think I can. I think I can. I think I can.
Aaron said thumbnail it.
Will do.
Emma said I second this.
I'll just send it to him and be like, this should be your new profile picture. Probably will. The other thing is like when you have rotation and at the start of it, your arms are far away from your body and then you really quickly bring them into your body. So both of his arms come into his body right here. That helps accelerate the turn too.
And I mean, that goes for all the limbs.
All of the limbs. Yes.
You start rotating with the leg out and you bring it in.
Yes.
It's going to add momentum.
Yep.
You do both. Even better.
Yep. And with great power comes great responsibility. If you're not used to playing with this kind of physics, you might be like, whoa, I went faster than I was prepared for.
Yeah.
It's normal.
End up spinning a few extra times.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to add that, so in addition to that internal prep he's getting from his arms, once he goes into that duck, so you can see his head is going in like a U shape as it's swinging down and up, like he's going down quite a bit further than necessary.
The next TikTok sensation.
But that's giving him added momentum because of that like really drastic change.
It's kind of like the bouncing ball physics I talked about a few weeks ago. Seriously, that face. So good. And I really appreciate how part of it he's like, oh, I need to keep connected to her and not bring her towards me. So he really tries to leave that center counterpoint as unaffected as possible, and he just brings it up as opposed to bringing it
I'd also like
towards
to
him.
point out what PJ's doing in the background.
All right, let's go back and let's take a pass and watch PJ. There it goes. There it goes. He used the force to make the phrase change happen. I think that's what it was.
He does like a little wax on.
He does. I also just adore that he's wearing like a tuxedo t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to look at Chris again.
Sugar tuck.
Yeah.
Sugar tucks. Yeah. When a sugar tuck is done well.
Yeah. So I wanted to look at his shoulders specifically in relation to his hand for Estelle. So once he gets palm to palm with her, there's not too much more movement towards him, but he's still giving that absorption. You can see he's adding some like length to that arm by rotating. So then he's not bringing his arm like sandwiched up to him. He still has some like power.
Yeah, because his hand is still like in front of his face. Mm-hmm. It's not beside his ear.
Yeah.
And I want to note there's this really subtle, the handhold comes toward us in the camera after count one just a little bit, and that's what allows, so right here it got lifted, but it also came towards us a little bit. And that's what it's encouraging Estelle's shaping here, which she increases on her end. Yeah. And then the handhold goes away from us ever so slightly and gets back in front of Chris's shoulder. And then he stops it and lets her run into it. And then he has his internal shaping to his left, but he didn't let the handhold go further down the slot while he shaped that.
Right. Which is the important part.
So important.
And like, I do want to say, you know, for that lead in particular, like you should be rotating to an extent, but I wanted to point it out because it is quite a drastic change for him.
I really appreciate how she really continues to progress through that 3.
Mm-hmm.
She isn't just taking it as a forward check. She's delaying her weight transfer, but she is transitioning her center over that foot and releasing her back foot.
Yeah.
And then pivoting.
You can see he has his right arm. It's free and it's quite a ways behind him.
You can't quite see it because it's like on the other side of him for a bit.
And he does kind of like a swinging motion to bring it around rather than like, I don't want to say controlling it, but like using the muscles to place the arm.
Yeah.
Because doing that would not give him any momentum for this like rotation that he has going on.
Yeah, so he's actually using pulse timing to use physics for this internal rotation. So if we think about that bouncing ball idea, so we have his hands here, his hands here,
Aaron's
his hands here.
pulse timing.
Do you want to talk about that while I'm drawing more circles?
I'm not sure exactly what you meant, so I
okay,
will
cool.
explain that.
So it's kind of like the if you remember the bouncing ball I was talking about. So if we see all of these circles at the beginning of this, his hand really isn't traveling through space very far. And then it accelerates through the center, and then it slows down again. So it's that idea of slowing out of a position, speeding up, and then slowing down again on the other side. So it has a strike and a dissipation. So the strike is on the bottom of the swing, and then it dissipates up top. And that's just how physics works. If you apply force to extend your arm and then dissipate that force, it'll slow down on the other side. So hopefully that makes sense. That's one of those that would be easier if we were all in a room together and then I could mime for you.
Yeah. If only. And said one day.
Someday. Although I do some, we do some of that stuff in our Patreon. Every second week of the month, Alicia and I film ourselves doing exercises for our patrons. So.
Emma said, "Can and that's just how physics works" be the new tagline.
Yes. All right, and then I think you wanted to talk about his leg.
Right here. I also wanted to point out what Estelle does.
Okay.
Right before. I just wanted to once again point out how much rotation she's adding based on like where her hips are. Because a lot of times that internal rotation can be done with like the upper body, but she uses not only her upper body, but she really takes it into the lower body as well.
Yeah, the kind of tie of her belt really makes it obvious because like you can see it's facing the other dancers. Now it's facing us. And it falls through.
Yes.
to the other video. So I think you wanted to talk about this turn.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the amount of prep that Ben is giving her for that kind of free turn. So he has that right hand connected enough to bring her forward, releases that, and then connects very lightly to the back of her right shoulder.
Man, this is an old enough video that the frames are on 2s. So I'm having to click twice as fast.
But you can see the way that he releases off of her back. Aaron said first world problems.
Right? But if I like hold it down, and I think it'll stutter for you guys, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah. But the way that he releases off of her back, he's coming kind of more up than towards himself. Which tells me that what he was giving her was not very intense. He was giving her a very light lead into that rotation. And so because of that, you can see that her turn happens slower. So she doesn't just rotate on one foot. She goes through a full 3-step turn.
And it's mostly in place instead of traveling.
Right.
And I think you want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to look at the what he's doing for this prep specifically. So he's bringing her in, which is going to be happening with the right arm that he has connected to the back. But because he wants her to open up, you can see that he actually ends up using that left arm as well. So really he's like prepping her with that right arm and then following through with the left to open her up and swing around.
And I really appreciate how he's keeping her right arm in front of her body instead of forcing it back behind her.
Mm-hmm. Which is why his elbow is so far back behind him.
Yeah. Bingo. Super important detail.
Yeah, if you're going to use that arm to lead something to open, like it really does need to be coming from a really far back place if you're leading it.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not going to have the effect that you're looking for. It won't connect properly with the follow.
And if they don't have the tools to protect themselves, it could injure them.
That as well.
So one of the things that Ben is doing is he's bringing his right hand towards his body, like directly to his center while he's stepping forward onto his left foot, which is what is allowing Malia to step in between his legs with her right foot. And then if we go through really slowly right here, you can watch Ben's right foot snake close to Malia's right. And it gets close enough that their knees meet right here. And so it's her right knee running into his right knee that creates that kick.
Yep.
And it's about bringing her to his knee, not kneeing her. We've talked about this before, but we didn't have a visual representation at the time. That's really important. She's just like minding her own business, pivoting through space. And she's like, oh, I ran into a thing. I'll kick my leg out. Whee! It's very simple.
Yeah. So probably should point out that he isn't leading that with that arm, that left arm.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more of the follow through to help open it up a little bit more.
Yeah, he's leading with this hand and by just having his knee in her way.
Mm-hmm.
This is just kind of like a guardrail.
Mm-hmm. Like there will be some connection through it, but it's not nearly as important.
Yeah, it's like the backup stabilizer connection. It's not driving anything. Oh yeah, this is the one where he's like, yeah, let's do a pass. And she's like, I'll do it on the floor, thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to like point out like what his hand is doing, because she ends up in a rotation, which is not necessarily what was being led. It was very much just kind of an invitation. And then he ends up with his arm further across the slot than.
Yeah, his arm is pretty much fully extended right there.
Mm-hmm. It's just like a very indecisive moment.
I know. I really love what she chose to do with it, though. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I also wish my knees were that strong. Mm-hmm. That'd be great. And then if we fast forward through this.
Yes, I was going to.
Oh, jeez. Anyways, sorry. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to talk about how they ended up in that, where she was like sitting on the floor.
Okay.
So you see, so Malia's going down and she's kind of, leading what she's wanting to do with it. And Ben sees that she's wanting to rotate around, so he's taking the hand and bringing it around in like a semicircle. And because he wasn't expecting her to change the distance in relation to him as she goes through it, you can see that he brings it back to the equal distance on the other side, which is why she ends up kind of coming back towards him.
Yeah, it's just a little too far away from her, so it's pulling her center back towards him.
And because they are connected through the whole thing, that's what's ending up causing that tipping.
Yeah. It's like more impressive in slow motion.
I know.
Like, damn.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I was showing.
And then this part, Ben is all like,
yeah,
that was all me.
But I would like to just point out what he does during that. He just kind of like does a little bit of like a panic stand by her.
A little bit. I appreciate right here, he's moving in contra to her, so he's moving to his left while she's moving to her left, which is creating a tension connection in the handhold. So they actually have a center counterpoint tension connection right here.
Yep.
And then it releases upward as it goes around her center.
And then like as soon as he finds where she's at, he's like, no!
He's like, shuffle, and I got you.
Move closer.
I really appreciate how he shuffles into a really lovely turnout plie. It's like, it was close there for a second, but it looked pretty.
It worked out. Chuck in the background's like,
I know, right?
yeah, I wanted to talk about this prep going into this thing.
It's a dip where she shaped more and it looked neat.
It ends up being like a walk around type thing. So I wanted to look at where Ben is leading Malia versus where she is prepping herself.
Mhm.
You can see she's like following what he's doing. But then like what she actually ends up doing is delayed from like where he's at.
Yeah.
And you can really see that she is increasing that turn rate, I believe, because they're wanting to go into like this faster part in the music or something along those
Yeah.
lines. She wanted it to be faster.
Yeah.
Faster. And so you can see that she is connected, not super connected, connected enough to follow where he's at. But then that free arm is really what is helping create that rotation. So she's really opening up towards the audience with body, and her free arm comes back behind her and then drapes across like she's kind of punching through the air.
Yeah. And I want to highlight why I think that needed to happen. So through count 1, doing great. If you look at Malia's left arm, it's fully extended.
Yeah.
And her amount of extension is constant right through about here. But then you can see a bend in her elbow start happening right here as she's placing or striking her 2. And it's really important as a leader when you're doing these kind of preps to not force the follow to change the length of their frame, because that it negates the prep you're trying to create.
Exactly.
Because it's creating compression at an angle that is parallel to the slot, and that does not create rotation. So what Ben could have done right here is to take a larger step 2 down line instead of just collecting underneath himself. And that would have helped draw Malia forward in such a way that her arm was still fully extended on count 2.
Right.
And then the release would have felt more natural.
Right.
I really appreciate how he holds the base of her skull for this dip. Like, that is just heaven when a leader holds your neck or the base of your head for this kind of dip.
My neck is very fragile, so
Same.
yeah, I wanted to look again right here at the rotation that Malia is creating. Because once again, Ben is like prepping her, but he is very light with what he's doing, really. So you can see this left hand that comes up to like rotate her. When it comes towards us a little bit, you can see where it's placed on her, which is not behind her.
Yeah.
It's like on her side, which doesn't help for rotation. So what she's doing to get around, because she realizes that's what he wants, that's where he's reaching for, but he can't quite give her that power. So you can watch her take that. I think it's her right foot. Yeah, the right foot. So it's going to come across the midline of her body. And it's placing. So then she's just unwinding herself. So she's the one that powered that turn. Had it been Ben powering the turn, it probably would have happened more on one foot rather than
They're
being
so cute right now. Sorry.
rather than being a step and unwind.
This whole dance is neat. Highly recommend going and back and watching the second song for both of these videos. Oh, I love that one right there. Okay, that's what we're talking about.
I'd like to note that Malia is in full control this entire time.
Yep.
A lot of times you might see follows get into these positions and it's more out of them falling out of something. But she is fully controlled throughout every point. And you can tell that because she is getting in like such unique shapes, but it's not, there's an end point to them.
And at the beginning of this right here, she's very pitched forward and delaying her weight transfer back onto that foot. So she's using her right foot as a brake. And that's one of the ways you can tell that she's in control here. And Ben is doing such a wonderful job of offering the perfect center counterpoint that's equal and opposite to what she's doing. So that way he's a point of balance for her. And then right here, this is really important. Notice the hand is going up, up, up. So it's crossing across the slot as it's going up to help with that rotation, but it's mostly going up. And then again, she's like pitching this way to count, like to slow herself down. And then I think this transition is the one that I love the most. I don't know about you.
Yeah, this is the one that I hadn't noted.
Yeah, how she kind of lilts and swings her left arm with her hips and slows down her turn.
She's using that arm to give herself a option to have a lot more momentum. Because you can see once again that like U shape that I was talking about earlier with Chris. That's what's happening with her arm, her hand.
It's arcing.
And she has the option to really bring that even more across her body if she was wanting to add a lot of momentum.
Yeah, because she could use that to initiate her whole left side of her body projecting forward and through that rotation if she wanted to.
Yep.
Like it started in the arm and then drive her side forward, but she chooses not to do that.
Yeah. She uses it enough to like help her get into that rotation because of that like weird handhold that she's in with Ben. Like I said earlier, when you get into weird handholds, you need a little extra help from one person or the other.
Yeah, and in both examples in this video and the last video with Chris and Estelle, when they got into awkward handholds, they took their time resolving it. Because it can actually be, it might seem counterintuitive to stay in an awkward position longer, but if you both try to abort it really quickly, you actually have an increased likelihood of hurting yourself.
I also want to point out where Ben is like moving her hand, because he's watching her rotate a little away from him and getting some of that energy and prepping herself before he's actually bringing the hands up and around.
Yeah, because this is where understanding when as a leader you're supposed to be following the connection versus leading it is super important. And you can see how like intensely focused he is on her through this moment. So right here, he's following and he's actually riding the energy with a bit of a ronde. Mm-hmm. And he's following her. And then as soon as she starts shifting her weight to this right foot, he's like, okay, I understand what the resolution of her movement is going to be. So he can start then leading it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's important in general, but I would also say specifically in this position that they're in, because had he chosen to like take over the connection, he would have hurt her shoulder.
Yes, because her right arm is very much straight out to her right side and maybe even a little bit back. It's kind of, yeah.
Because she's rotating away from him.
Yeah.
So if he does anything further, it's going to hurt her arm, her shoulder.
Yeah, that's like super duper important. Cool. I think that about covers it for this evening.
Yeah. Anyways, well, I think that unless you guys have any questions, that is it for today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you watching the replay, make sure to hit subscribe. Everybody join us live Thursday, August 13th at 7 p.m. Pacific when we're going to have Bryn Anderson on with us. It's going to be shenanigans. It's going to be great. Don't miss it.
It'll be a special episode.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Cool.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
What's up, mermaid eyes, by the way? I didn't say anything about that.
Hi. Yeah, I just felt like...
You look like you're about to grow flippers.
Thank you. This is one of the things I do to abstain from boredom in COVID. Apply color vigorously.
I want to see glitter and sparkles next week. Like glitter and sparkles, you know, with the whole shebang. Like,
well, there's actually a fair amount of sparkle on my face. I'm just so fucking pale, you can't see it.
Do like red sparkles or something.
Oh yeah, I should turn on my light so you can like.
That'd be helpful.
It's gonna get darker and darker.
oh, I hate it so much. Okay. Warm. Yeah, I look less dead.
Oh, you're slightly more alive now.
Slightly.
I love the fact that Chris does like chin tucks for eyelashes. So flattering. I'm really not entirely sure what happens during that first part. He ends up almost on the floor.
That part where he's like, do a pass, maybe with a turn.
Uh-huh.
I'll leave it up to you. And she's like, I'll do it on the floor, thanks.
Yep. A couple years ago at the Open, Chris and I were in one of the practice rooms. And Malia and RJ were in there. And so was Ben and... what else? Someone was with Ben. But Ben was watching them, like, prep their routine. And he was giving them feedback. And his feedback for one part was like, Malia, maybe you should, like, not look like you're in pain. It was great. Granted, what was happening? She was being dragged somehow, but be honest here. All right.
Gotta.
Maybe just look like you're not in pain. Like you might enjoy this a little bit.
Hopefully now all of the technical difficulties are over. Thank you for being patient with us, as always. Being live is fun. Speaking of being live, you want to be live for when we've got Bryn Anderson on August 13th. Take it from me. You want to be there live as opposed to waiting for the recording. So for those of you watching the recording now, because I'm speaking to you through time and space on YouTube, you want to be there live. Anyways.
We have some fun things prepared for that.
Anyways. I was trying to circle her arm, but I circled Chantel. Oh, me. Okay.
Also kind of looks like he's seen a ghost.
He's seen something. He doesn't want to talk about it. Did anybody else, when they were a kid, love just like spinning and spinning and spinning in place and then like collapsing to the floor and having that feeling of the world continuing to spin around you because of your inner ear?
Robert has his hand raised.
Yay, I'm not the only one. I did that so much.
Yeah.
I am such a dork.
So my boyfriend was over here and he just finished like pumping some iron. So he was doing the thing of like, you seen my beach ball? I think it went that way. And I was just so excited. Keep on keeping on.
Will do.
Because that's how physics works.